Yeah, we are early, huh? Feels like for once, I've actually done a little preparation. Thanks for calling that out, Bulborb. I don't know if you're talking about me or yourself, but welcome to see you. Or like, great to see you here. Also, hello, Nikori. Good to see you here too. Got designer in the chat too. How are you doing? Let's switch to this screen. I think it's gonna be black again. Yeah, we need to have a look at that as well. How is everybody doing? Great to see you all here. Let me first fix up this little... There we go. There we go. Likewise. No, I just arrived unusually early. Oh, okay, okay. I thought you were taking a jab at me. Which, I mean, deserved. Like, I don't think I've ever been on time. Ever. Really. Unbreakable is here as well. Or you breakable, sorry. See ya! Hi, see ya! How's it going? Let me move some stuff about here. Great to see you, see ya! Go now for a coffee, but I'll be back! Yeah! Oh, coffee is actually a good idea, but I'll have to have one after the stream. Let's bring up all the WIP and work in progress stuff as well. Alright, I think we're just gonna jump straight in, as we always do, right? And actually start the stream, like, on time for once. So, as usual, what we're doing in WIP Wednesday is we're gonna go through the community, the community's work, and all the people that basically require any feedback. Like, I'll go through all the people here. And we're gonna do some live overpainting, so if you have any ideas, any feedback yourself that could be nice in relevance to what people are asking, feel free to share that in the chat as well. First one up is Yuri. Yuri is working on the cyberpunk scene, and they're saying it's almost finished. Still some small things to do, like putting lights in the elevator and putting content on the screens. Is there anything that I should add or remove? Polishing my scene seems the hardest task for me. Let's have a look. Oh, sorry. Hi, Andrea. Good to see you back. Lovely to have you. So, anything that can be polished here. So the main thing, like the real thing that jumps out to me is I want to see you define more where we need to focus. Right? So for example, in this little screenshot here, it's very hard to know where the focus is. And I think we brought that up before. But what you probably want to do is just like decrease the intensity of some lights and increase the intensity of other lights in comparison. So something... I'll give a quick example here, right? A quick example, what we could do with that. Let's see. 500. And I'm gonna do the midtones. I'm gonna see if we can reduce some of the tones here. Let's maybe reduce all this stuff in the middle as well. And it's going to be very subtle, but you'll see what this does in just a second. Let's see. Let's put the opacity like a little bit higher. We're gonna reduce this. Use the light as well. And then we're gonna do the inverse for bringing out some of the other areas, right? So I'm kind of picking like 2 points at random, right? But I think there's quite a nice contrast between the two. So, but now if we just focus on this little screen that we have right in front of us, right? And then we flick between the two. See what that's doing? Like it's exaggerated, right? But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give people like areas to focus on, and I'm roughly deciding that like at the end of the corridor would be an interesting one, and then the door where something is happening would be an interesting one as well. And they kind of align with like the rule of thirds as well. So you have like somewhat of a nice flow going through the environment. Compared to like the previous one where everything is kind of more evenly lit and it makes for like a much more noisy environment in total, right? And you could even, once you've done this, you can even like tweak like how far you want to push it, right? It's kind of interesting. So it gives you like some flexibility, but that's what I would do. Since you're kind of ramping down anyway, right? And I would do the same thing here as well. So again, taking like a quick look at this. I don't think we need to brighten any values because the screens are going to be so light by themselves. But we can still darken like the rest of the room. Right? Like maybe let's make the rest of the room darker. Right? And have some really interesting contrast going on. And then we can potentially, again, because you have like a strong focal point here, right, with the computer screens, but you can also then just like brighten up like other spaces, right? So you have like 2 points where you could kind of look at. You have like your main focal point here. And then you have like another focal point here. Something that allows you to bounce around the scene a little bit. Vinicius, thank you so much for asking that question. I will share our website, which allows you to become a member yourself. I'll share that in the chat real quickly. Also, hi Joe Bates. Hi Andrea. I've already said hi, but hey. Hope everyone is doing well today. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Making some really solid progress on my own work as well, so I've been really enjoying working on it. But to come back to this then, right? You see what I'm trying to do here, right? Like I'm trying to make for a much more focused image that has like some really interesting contrast and just playing with the values, right? We're not really changing that much to the scene. But you can really like make for like a nice contrasty scene that has like lots of intrigue, right? Because again, sometimes it's really hard to know what we should be looking at or what we should be focusing on. And pick those things. I'll make a couple of notes here, right? So the first one is contrast. Use contrast as a focal point. That's what I'm doing here, right? Like in this screenshot here, what I'm doing is just upping the contrast between the bright points and the darker points. And what that is giving us more like a tighter control over what to focus on. So the second point is that contrast needs to be in service of the scene in general, right? And also, like, what I mean by that is that if you're gonna pull people towards something that they should be looking at, pull them to something that is worth looking at, right? So for example, if I know that you said that the elevator shaft is not finished yet, right? But like, it's not really that valuable to pull people this way because this is empty. Right? So maybe what you'll do instead is have the lights be like lower compared to other regions, right? So for example, this region, you have some interesting elements there. You have cabling and you have pipes going there. That could be interesting to guide people towards. So, second point is pull focus to interesting sections. Or regions. Right? You don't want to be pulling people towards something that doesn't have like anything to say for itself. So keep that in mind as well. And just as like a last tip, you know, like what I would say is it's not really like an execution point, but it's more like I want you to look at lighting as in a way that you're painting with light, right? That's exactly what I'm doing here today, and that's exactly how I want you to look at it as well. Where it's no longer about like, oh, the environment, and it's not necessarily about like the individual props in the environment, but it's about the bigger picture. Like, where do I want people to focus, right? And like, how can I increase that focus going there by, like I said in the beginning, diminishing the light in other regions and increasing the light in other sections. So think about this process as painting with light. That's how I want you to look at things. Exactly like I did today, right? So if we, let's see, if we group these two, I think. Pull them up a little bit. You can see in both cases what I did, right? Just as a little recap. Like this was it before, like it's pretty generic, right? Like the lighting is kind of generic across the entire scene. And what I tried to do is pull the focus more towards like certain regions that have interest. So yeah, that's what I would say. If you're thinking about rounding this up, this is the most important thing that you can do. Like really think about the lighting. Really think about like how you're gonna pull people towards certain areas. Thank you so much, Eric, for subscribing. Appreciate that a lot. Nice. Okay, we're gonna move straight on then. And thank you so much for posting your work as well, Yuri. I appreciate that. Oh wait, before we move on, aiming for AAA studios, would you say the scene is good or it lacks something? I'm gonna be honest, like there are some parts of the last feedback round that haven't been addressed yet. So I think I'm just gonna stick with this, and then I'll let you decide like what you need to add or not. Okay. Thank you so much for posting your work, Yuri. And we're gonna move straight on to George. It's been a while since we've seen this, George. It's good to see you back. So we've got George over here. What are your thoughts? Do you feel the path to the cabin is enough, or should I cover it with meshes? Does the scene feel too busy, or does it work well currently with the scattered debris that I have? I honestly think that the scattered debris doesn't really add too much, in my opinion. It also feels like it's too scattered, especially because, if I remember correctly, this was supposed to be a site of a person that was kind of using like lots of other things to like reinforce their own shelter with. Right? So you wouldn't necessarily have like a bunch of stuff that's like scattered all over the place. You would probably have stuff put together in like an area that's like his what would you call it, like junkyard, you know? So you could have like a scrap pile here, especially for the bigger pieces, right? A scrap pile for the bigger items. And then what you're doing is kind of concentrating like all the scrap that's kind of here, right? Because this is something that I think I brought up like the last time when we talked about it as well. A scene like this is something that really benefits from a nice balance between having a focal point, right? Having something that's like relatively busy, and then showcasing like the empty landscape, sort of to elevate the feeling of loneliness and like isolation, right? And keeping the rest of the scene a little bit more clean is really going to help with that too. Yeah, I think it's an easy fix. I think honestly, getting rid of like most of the debris. I know why you added the debris, right? Because there is a concern that it doesn't look like as detailed as it should be. But I don't think that's too big of a deal here, honestly. Like you can just have like most, like imagine that this is not just one scrap pile, but you have like a couple ones, right? So let's say this is another scrap pile here up front. And then have like the rest of the scene like pretty empty. That could also work, right? But something that's a little bit more focused. Then for the path, there is an opportunity to do something really interesting with a path. Instead of having it come straight down towards the camera, try to make a path like something a little bit more interesting. I'm currently doing a lot with just like very, well, relatively simple paths in my scene. So I'll see if I can give an example of that. Let's see. Let's see what is a good example. Let's bring up this guy, right? So in this scene, what I'm doing is I'm letting the path deliberately go from like the bottom right to more to the left, and then it kind of like curves a little bit, and then goes into like a bridge that you can barely see, but like it has like an interesting way of kind of like leading you towards the scene, right? And then it kind of splits off between two paths here. But something that's like a little bit more interesting than just having it come straight down towards the camera. Something that could be something like this, right? But the most important thing is that you sort of try to use, like, either in your case debris or the natural landscape to sort of hint why the path is in this position, compared to what you had before, right? And I think you actually do a great job on that, because you kind of have like these natural slopes that lead you towards like the path in the middle, right? So I think you really nailed that part. It's just that the path itself is not too interesting enough at this point. So like think about something that's like a little bit more interesting to look at. And maybe you could have like multiple paths, right? Because if this, let's see. It's also a bit boring, right? So you could do some very interesting stuff, actually, now that I'm kind of playing around with the shapes a little bit, right? And how I would actually emphasize is I think you have the right idea of having like a path, right? That's like a lighter color. But actually it would be cool to have the path emphasized with like little footsteps. You know? Like you have, depending on what kind of environment you're in, right? I'm assuming that this is like a crash spaceship. You could have like some of these footprints that have like the stereotypical like boot print. Could be very interesting to play with. You could do it in a combination with making a lighter material, right? But I think the footprints are actually going to add more than like a lighter material variation is going to do in this case. It could be very, very interesting to work with. Yeah, something like this, right? Like I'm trying to really add like a sense of like a dynamic nature to the pathing, where you could also use it to kind of emphasize that this person has been all over and has kind of dragged like little sections of like debris all over the place. Yeah, you could do some really interesting stuff with the footprints. Let's see. But yeah, let's do a little recap, right? So I think the debris placement, especially for the bigger stuff, right? I'm mainly concerned about like the bigger elements that have like a strong contrast in the environment. I think they are like too generically scattered. Because the rest of the stuff doesn't really matter too much, right? Like for the smaller parts, or like the stuff that doesn't like have a lot of contrast. Again, what I'm trying to do in my head is I'm kind of looking at it from like a very objective, like very art fundamental kind of focus, right? Where I'm thinking not about like the shapes or what the asset is or how many there are necessarily, right? What I'm thinking about is how contrasting it is towards the environment, because when it really comes down to it, that's what's gonna pull the attention, right? Like all these little bits. I'll do like I'll give like an example here, right? These things are gonna stand out way more than probably a lot of this stuff that some people might not even have noticed, right? Because it is the same color, so it's not gonna pull your attention to it. So I would combine the ones that are like really contrasting, and then you can still scatter stuff around, just not with the contrasting color. So I'm gonna add that here, like in between brackets. Number 2 is dynamic paths. Make it look interesting, right? Gonna be super, super important. Especially when you're not working with a lot in this scene, right? In like a good way, right? But then if you want to emphasize like paths going towards something, you'll have to make the most of it. So make the path itself more interesting by having like footprints or something like that, and then use the same technique that you had before, where you're kind of leading. You kind of have like your path, and you kind of have like these, in your case, like smaller ridges, right? But they kind of point you towards the path, which is very nice. I think it's just the path itself that needs a little bit of tweaking. Let's see. There's something else. You feel like there's something missing. So I think something that could be interesting to play with is more parallax. And with parallax in this case, I mean terrain parallax. Because you have like this one ridge here. Let me actually make a new layer for this. You have this one ridge here. You have this one ridge here. And then it becomes pretty tough to see. Right? I think you have another ridge here. Maybe a smaller ridge here. But then you have like the large mountain in the back. Right? And I think what you could do is fill in like some of the middle parts where you still have like some sort of mountain here. Like some sort of ridge. Right? Where maybe... Let me try out some stuff. You could maybe do something like this, right? So you have like your first ridge, then number 2, number 3, and then number 4, right? So like more parallaxing layers of landscape that are going like behind each other. Maybe trying to do something a little bit less straight to help as well. So yeah, just adding like a little bit more, right? I think actually like your background terrain is pretty sweet. I think I really like it. And that's also why like the mid ground needs just a little bit more work. So that's like number 3 that I wanted to bring up. Cool. And I think that's going to be pretty much it for this one, George. You see that I'm keeping it like very broad, right? Like focusing the debris a little bit so that it's not like generically placed. Focusing on like the pathing that you have and making it like look really interesting, maybe with some footprints or something like that. It could be really sweet. And then just fixing or like adding a little bit more parallaxing onto the terrain. The rest of it, yeah, it's up to you, I would say. Depends on what you still have in mind. Yeah. Best of luck, and thanks for sharing the work again. I'm looking forward to how it's gonna look within the end. Oh, maybe okay, I'll add it here. Like another point. Atmospherics. Right, just like some like dust or like wind or like debris wind or something like that to really add like another layer of like atmospherics to the whole thing. That could be interesting. As like a last little thing that I'll just throw in there. Cool. Thanks, George. Best of luck. I'm also gonna ask for the next one. Maybe not for this one, but maybe get some chat participation going, right? Especially for the longer ones. I think this one is going to be a pretty short one because I don't think there's like any specific feedback. So this is more just like an update. See ya! Welcome back. Increase the height of the door. Now I reduce the ceiling, reduce the door. And forgot to mention that I added another material that blends the trim. Yeah, the concrete is looking really nice. I think the trim here does like a good job. I really like how that is coming together. I also like how contrasting this is compared to some of the other shots that you had. So, yeah, interesting choice. Chunky blocks. Yeah. Yeah, there is something interesting going on here. Don't know if that's the lighting or not. This is the only thing that I'm gonna point out on this, by the way. Seems to be like shading issues happening on this block specifically. Like it feels like it's kind of going from rounded to like straight or something. But the rest of it looks really nice though. I like where this is going. I like all the updates. So thank you for sharing it, Monete. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the next update. And then I think this is going to be an update as well. I'm not sure. Let me have a quick look. I'll try to model as much as I can so I can send it here for Tim's feedback on Wednesday. That's it for today. There's also a presentation video. Okay. Let me show the video as well. I don't think... Yeah, I mean, it's cool to have a video blocked out, right? But yeah. Make sure to focus on the challenge itself. I don't actually know what the deliverables are, if you even need a video. Yeah, this is what an R-Station challenge, exactly, Bulborb. Yeah, I honestly feel that there's not too much that I want to add for this one, because most of it is still just the same. I mean, not to diminish the work, right? It's still in the same stage that it was before. It's just you're farther along the stage right now, right? You're still blocking out, adding more details to the buildings, like refining or like further defining the yeah, further defining all the buildings, right? So let me see. I mean, to be fair, like a lot has changed since last week, but it's still, you're still in the same stage, right? So I would say keep this momentum going. Keep up the good work. We're seeing like more interesting colors coming into the environment as well, so that's awesome to see. I like where it's going. Yeah. Make sure that you know, kind of in line what we said before, right? Make sure that you know that whenever you're modeling something, or like all the stuff that you're putting into place now, that's gonna have a place or a texture or a material, right? So that you can kind of work out like, hey, this is gonna be a trim sheet, this is gonna be a tileable, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. Make sure that you keep that in mind and try to reuse just as much as possible in this. Sia saying, I feel the composition is nice. Trying to think if there's anything going forward to keep in mind, but it's looking awesome. Thanks. I feel like it's gonna get really different when I start adding textures. I really gotta place those ASAP. Yeah. This is the thing with a challenge, right? Like, speed is key, but you gotta oh, sorry, I just got distracted by by my little YouTube overlay. But yeah, speed is key, but you have to do it like in a consistent manner where, again, what I'm saying, right? Like, make sure that everything kind of has a place, make sure that everything, you know where everything lives and that you can keep track of everything, and just try to reuse the most of it. What I'm seeing here looks cool. I would say keep it up. Do early tests and like start mapping out trim sheets and tileables and all that kind of stuff. Do that early on. Even if that tileable is just like a very quick representation of what the texture will eventually be, right? Because even that quick representation of that texture is going to give you a lot of insight into how you can use that texture. So for example, I give this this advice a lot when it comes to trim sheets, because as soon as you start making a trim sheet and you bake down like a really simple representation of it, then envisioning it and like start using it is very eye-opening to a lot of people. So that would be probably the next step, is spend a couple more days on the buildings and then just start blocking in like a bunch of textures and like get them in, right? Like as basically the same approach as like your block out is you start from like very rudimentary shapes and then you just keep building upon them. Do the same thing with your textures as well. Because there's actually something very interesting that is probably going to happen in a challenge like this, is that you'll have to start to decide like where you're going to put more time in and where you're going to have to let things go. And if you have all the things in place, that decision becomes way easier to make compared to if you still have to do like a bunch of stuff there, right? Maybe that's all self-explanatory, but that's how I would approach the whole thing. So yeah, best of luck, Giovanni. Best of luck. I know that there's no like direct feedback. If you want like any specific feedback, feel free to always put it in your WIP Wednesday, right? Because if not, I'm gonna keep it very generic and probably keep it very short as well. But best of luck, Giovanni. Best of luck. I think you have 32 days left, right? I just looked at like the timer on the ArtStation challenge, so you got time. You got time. You're doing good. Best of luck. I'm cool with short and blunt. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Giovanni. Next up, we got Sheila. Sheila is cruising. Just freaking going from scene to scene, kicking ass. I love it. So the new scene based on the concept by Marika Ravi. Awesome. Shout out to Marika Ravi. It's a small scene, but there's a lot of foliage and the water to worry about later. For the lighting, I would appreciate some tips on how I can achieve a similar mood. Okay, so tips on lighting. Any general tips about techniques that I might use on how to approach this scene? Cool. It is a lot of foliage. It is a lot of rocks, which is awesome because that means that you just have to make like a couple of pieces and then you're good to go. Something that I would look at, and I know that this is going to come out of... Yeah, this is going to be a total surprise to anyone here for sure. But try to think in a modular way, right? So what I mean by that is if we were to break down the scene here, what we're looking at is we've got... Oh, let's sure that we don't go too big. So what we're looking at here is oh, that's too small again. Yeah. Let's say 3 rocks. You've got the main statue. Main statue. Let's say 3 candles. Got like 2 trees, let's say. And then like a bunch of smaller foliage, right? So that could all use like the same sheet. Like you could basically use an atlas for like all the smaller foliage, or maybe an atlas or 2. So I'm just gonna call it like small foliage. And then, yeah, small foliage or like shrooms, right? So actually a scene like this is perfect because you can focus on the main item here and then dress it up with like a whole bunch of like modular pieces or like modular assets or whatever you want to call it, which is going to be our rocks, like a little bits of foliage, like some candles, and all the stuff that we basically talked about just right now. But you can take that another level deeper and also do the same thing with your textures too. So for example, the rocks, you wouldn't necessarily make those with like the moss on top of it and like build all the moss in, but you would use like a Z up shader, which is something that I think we talked about before with your work, Sheila. So this has come as no surprise. But this also means for other people that might be interested is that you have the rock by itself, and then you have like the moss by itself, and then you combine the two, and it becomes like really modular. Because now, once the moss is detached from the rocks, right, when it's like a separate entity that you can use on like other places, you could also just like use the moss on the main statue, or on the trees, or on whatever, right? So think about it that way, where you can separate chunks, and then just use like a very simple approach would be vertex painting, right? If you're not using like a shader, you can just build in some vertex painting, and you can just paint like certain sections of your statue, and then you have like some cool moss on it. Could be awesome. Let's see, maybe some grass as well as like a separate thing. But yeah, so in general, there's not too much here in terms of what you need to do, right? Which is perfect. And I think, honestly, from what I've seen you handle before, I think you're gonna really nail this, you know? There's not too much that's gonna be, like, really challenging for you, apart from... I think, honestly, like, the most difficult thing is gonna be making the water look really good. Because water relies on, like, a bunch of different things, right? So, for example, if you want to have this little pool here, right? Let's also break that up into like multiple sections, right? So you have a plane of water, but then for this kind of stuff, you need to make like a mesh. That's kind of like a waterfall stream, right? You can kind of have that mesh be like very intricate so that you can have like really interesting looking like bits of waterfall, like little stream. You just have that coming up here, and then these sections they use like the water mesh again, or you could just extend like the little waterfall mesh if you want to have it streaming longer. You could also do that, but then you're also gonna need like supporting. So the water plane is one. You have like your number 2 here, but then you're also going to need like some VFX to support it as well. Like splashes, ripples, all that kind of stuff if you want to make it look really good. If you really struggle with that, I would say get an asset pack. There's probably going to be a good one for like anything water, so don't be afraid to use that, especially if VFX is really not your thing and you never want to touch it with like a 10-foot pole. Don't worry about it at all. Just make sure that it looks good in the end, right? Whether you use like external assets or not. Because for other people that haven't heard me say this, like if you're an environment artist yourself, like you're not gonna lose like any points if you can't do your own VFX. Right? Because that's not why, in general, like companies are going to hire you anyway. So keep that in mind. But yeah, honestly, I don't think there's going to be too much difficulties here. I think block out is looking solid. You got the main shapes in there. You got like a little waterfall. All that kind of stuff in the back you can kind of fill up with like random sections of foliage that you have just like lying around. That's all good. Yeah. So, as a little recap, work modular, right? No surprise. You know this by now. I mean, everyone knows this by now. Working modular, and then the big challenge is probably going to be... Using external assets for the water if needed. Yeah, it could also be like a really nice challenge too. So don't let that little comment scare you away from doing it yourself. Last thing that I will say is there is, I don't know how good this is for like intricate stuff like this, but there is a water plugin inside of Unreal Engine. So I guess number 1 and possibly number 2 are taken care of. I don't know if it comes with VFX though. So you might have to look that, you might have to make that or look that up for yourself. But there is a water plugin built in, like in the plugins menu. So yeah, I would say check that out as well. And best of luck, Sheila. Best of luck. I think honestly, most of this stuff is going to be pretty straightforward, right? It's a very diverse scene in what you have to create, but it's very straightforward in how you're going to make it, right? So I think it's actually perfect if you want to challenge yourself on like multiple skills. This is a great choice. Yeah. Best of luck, Sheila. And thank you for posting your work. Next up, we got Greg over here coming in with Candyland. Oh, sorry, Candy Kingdom. This is where I'm at. I'm gonna add a rug to the main entrance to break up the solid brown, not really shown in the shot, and then add some dirt to the pink portion of the bridge. To the pink. Oh, to this section. Okay. Yeah. This is a very interesting one, right? Because I've seen you. I've kind of watched you. I've been creeping inside of your little thread that you have going on with the community, and it's been a very interesting scene to watch in terms of color usage, right? Because of course you want like a Candy Kingdom to look like very vivid and very colorful and like very very in your face, right? But it also makes for a very difficult scene to balance as well. So I think what I want to do is potentially talk a bit about that too. This is the toughest part. Yeah. I get it. Let me answer your question first though. Not sure of which of the angles I like better. And I'm down for any suggestion. Okay. Let's start with the angles then, right? I think both of them have something interesting going on. So I'll start with saying that the thing that I really like here is how much we can see from the actual road, right? Let's see. So I like how much we can see of that. I really do. Like that we have like this this overview, right? So that we have like coming in from like the side of the screen. I'm always a sucker for that. I do like that. I don't like, however, that this is your focal point and it's like almost slam in the middle of your scene, right? Like if you were to compare the distance between this and that. Ideally, what I would want to have is, well, I'll say it like this. I'm a sucker for is that your entrance would be somewhere around here or something, right? So that you have, if someone is looking at this, that they have to travel like all across your canvas rather than stopping in the middle. I don't know how personal this is. Like, I keep going back to the rule of thirds. I'm a sucker for that stuff, right? I don't follow it exactly, but I always like how wide it makes your frame, right? That's why I kind of like this one, because the center is more offset, right? So that's why I'm saying, like, I like a bit of both, where you have like the path leading into it, and then you have also like the gate itself being more on the side, right? In number 2. So I think it doesn't have to be as exacerbated as I have it here, right? It can also be that your gate is over here, but just like a little bit more offset to the right, so that it's not like too close to the center. Because if you have something close to the center, it always feels like a little bit weird. But yeah. So I know, I need to be annoying and not pick one of the 2 options, but have a third one. So sorry for introducing that. I can't help myself. And then in terms of what we talked about before, right? In terms of like the colors. I'm thinking what we can do with it, right? Because I think the red carpet that you have, like your idea with that, is actually pretty cool. I think that would also help a lot, where you have like a red carpet like guiding you in, right? Because if you look at the whole of the scene, most of it has pretty cool tones, right? So like something red in there is going to pull like a lot of attention. But I'm actually going to see if we can, let's see, I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to see what we can do with it. Because I almost want to just like dive into it as like, hey, look, we're gonna push this to like full candy corn, or like not candy corn, or like sugar, not sugar cane. What are those called? Like the really fluffy, like pink, candies that you like, candy balls that you get on like the fair. I don't know the English word for it. But like really colorful stuff, right? And then I'm actually gonna see cotton candy. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, second favorite. Exactly, cotton candy. Oh my god. Exactly. So I'm gonna see if I put that on here, and then we mask it. I don't even think we need to necessarily mask it. I think just pushing it up by itself could also, pushing the saturation up by itself, let me be clear, can also help a lot as well. And then I think what we could do is maybe introduce like some contrast, right? Like a little bit more contrast. Let's see, I'm gonna see how good this is gonna work, right? Making it, yeah. I need to watch out. I don't want to make it too dark, right? I just want to add like, especially in the tree line, like some darkness. And then what I would also do is go very specific with certain elements in your scene, right? So the way that I look at it again is I'm trying to place like volumes in places where I think it could be like nice to have like a bigger foreground element, right? I don't know what you have at your disposal, but what that would look like for me is having something here. Like maybe like a couple of bushes. Right, to kinda have that going. Let me see. What do you have available? Maybe even these guys, right? Like have like a cluster of them in the foreground. Because what I'm trying to do is add like a bit more depth and something that we could potentially use in terms of like a bigger foreground element. Let's see. I like what you're doing here. I'm a big fan of this. I think you can push that just... well, you don't want to... You don't want to interrupt with this shape, right? So... I think that's good. Maybe... It's going to feel too forced. I was about to say maybe like a shape here. Right? Something that blocks that little section, but it might feel a little bit too forced. And you also want to see like little bits of the river still, right? So... I think... Let's see. Again, I'm just thinking about it in terms of shapes, right? Like shape language. And then have like a couple more like spheres here. Second favorite was also saying I was thinking about breaking up the way too large socket mound in front of it. It's almost like a resting, but it's almost like a resting point and a lot of noise. Yeah, I don't think that's actually like too bad, honestly. It's just you gotta be careful that it doesn't become like too much, right? So that's why I'm kind of introducing like these sections here as well. But I agree that this section actually is like a nice contrast between like the palace above it. So that's actually nice, right? Like, that you make that realization yourself. Because that's, I mean, that's the gut instinct that I'm always like following, right? Like my gut instinct right now is saying that, hey, look, I like this stuff as well. I like how chunky and like a large area of rest it is, like you're saying. But then I don't like how this feels like two bands of just like brown stuff. So maybe we can break that up by adding like some of these trees in here. Right, so that we kind of get rid of some of the brown and break that up a little bit. And that's also going to help, like, this region that we just talked about, like, stand out a little bit more, right? I might even... Let's do it like this, right? Like a quick little overpaint. I know it's not, like, representable, but... Something is better than nothing, I guess. Right, and then we'll do the same thing here. You got these, like, nice eggs in the foreground. They're really cool. I'm absolutely going to make a bush. I honestly think that those eggs, like these shapes, could actually be really nice if you just scale them up a little bit as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bush, right? I'm looking at it as like, I just want like a nice rounded shape, because also like rounded shapes are like easier to be like very modular, right? Like you can rotate them, you can scale them up and down, you can squish them a little bit. They're very flexible. Yeah, you could use those eggs as well. And just blocking off like a little bit of the bridge. It's also like a very, very common tactic, right? It's just hiding little sections of it. Oh, they're jawbreakers. I thought you said lawbreakers. So at that point, you could easily see their pretty texture. Right now, they just get washed out. I don't think that's too big of a deal because we're talking about like colored spickles, right? I don't think, well, it's hard to tell, right? I don't think that's going to be too big of a deal. Oh, but yeah. I think what you're also hinting at is that at that point, like, you can't really like squish them or anything like that because a jawbreaker is meant to be round, right? So yeah, ignore what I said on that front then, because you kind of need them to be rounded then. Right, so I'm kind of boxing in like the area a little bit. Right. And then let's see what we can do with some other sections. Oh, dude. Yeah, this is already the increased. I think like 40-ish is how far we can push it. But what I was about to say is you could actually do something really cool with these like lollipops that you have here, like these popsicles or whatever they're called. And you could actually kind of use them to guide the way, right? Like if you almost have them as like little way markers. Right? And then you could maybe even, might be too much, but like I was thinking about putting them inside here. Might honestly be too much. Let's see. Let's look at the big picture. Because also, again, like the way that I'm looking at it is, yeah, I've put a few. I was thinking that you would have done that, right? Because it's kind of, it looks like it's made for it. It gets overwhelming. I'm getting that feeling too now that I'm doing it. The only reason why I'm thinking that those lollipops would actually be really interesting is because they have like a very bright color compared to some of the other ones, right? To compare to some of the other pieces of candy. So you could kind of use that as like a funnel again towards your castle entrance, right? Again, just purely thinking about the colors that it might bring. Yeah, I think you're right. I think not doing them on the bridge is probably a good idea. Or maybe if you were to do them, doing it at the beginning and the end only. Right? So that you don't like overwhelm people, but that could possibly work. Might be something to try. Yeah, it's a very interesting scene that you have going on, man. I'm gonna actually try something else. This is actually what I wanted to do in the beginning. I'm gonna see if it works. So I'm gonna put like a black mask in there. What are we painting with here? Because I still there's something in me that says like, hey, I want the castle to stand out more than the rest of the environment. You have to kind of be careful with how far you push stuff, right? Because you don't want it to be like super weird or like too saturated. It's wild. The next one I gotta do something from concept art. Yeah, I think so too. This is a very tricky one, but hey, you know, it's very unique as well, so I'm sure that it's been an experience. Right? Let's actually compare to what that was looking like before. I admire your imagination and creativity here, man. Yeah, 100%, right? Like, this is also what environment art to me is about, right? Like making something that's truly your own. So, yeah, I like it. Don't need those. Again, we're getting there, right? Like we're making improvements. So if we take all this stuff, like you can tell that in the grand scheme, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to, again, like increase the contrast and like especially make us focus more towards like the castle, right? Because before, if we, this is an interesting thing, right? Like now that we look at the original, like I didn't desaturate this, right? But it kind of feels like we did in comparison, right? It feels like everything is washed out a little bit more. But I think we can actually just like bring back color and like really pull the focus in towards like the castle at the end. And then maybe what I'm also inclined at is you have these trees, right? Which actually you can kind of use them as like a great blocking volume. And what I kind of want to do. Hello? Oh yeah, of course. I know it's all very rough, you know. Maybe we could break it up like a little bit as well. But what I'm trying to do is like I'm trying to create like a volume that's kind of again like pushing you towards like the middle, right? Might look a little bit weird, but hey. Let's see. I'm just gonna. Oh shit. Restaurants, all these guys. The reason why I'm doing this is because there's like lots of color and lots of detail over here, but I don't think it's actually conducive to like a better viewpoint. Like a better view towards the castle, right? So again, just pushing that in. And I think even if you like you're not really adjusting anything to the floor, right? Because you can keep the floor, there's some interesting elements, but you don't want to make them primary. You're pushing them back so that they become secondary or even like tertiary, right? Because these trees, if you add them, they're going to cast a little bit of shadow. But you can still look at like all the interesting detail that you added there, right? They're just going to be like a little bit more subdued, and it's not going to take away from the main castle. Because if we really wanted to make it clear, this is what I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to push you more towards that castle. Doesn't add anything. Hey, Till! But yeah, so this is what I'm trying to do, right? So I'm trying to push you more towards like the castle itself. And then the same can be applied to this stuff, right? Like same approach. I think if we then combine it to where it's like a better composition, like we talked about in the beginning, I think you're in a really good spot then, man. Doing really good. Yeah, again, like always what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to think about like volumes and colors and like shapes, you know, and I'm trying to be like, I'm looking for opportunities within your piece to be like, oh, that tree, that's like a nice subtle color that I can contrast between the bright colors of your castle. So yeah, that's really what I'm playing around with here, right? And you could even do the same thing here, right? Instead of having these like blue sections here, you could just add like a bunch of trees again, like on the bank of the river. And that could help with like, again, pushing you more toward the castle. Yeah, man. A lot of layers here, but I think it's really going to make a difference, you know? Cool, I absolutely follow you. Thank you for the feedback. No worries, man. Happy to help. And thank you for sharing your work again. How are you doing, Till? It's good to see you here. It's probably the first time ever that I've spoken English. But yeah, this is like our weekly thing that I do, where I just give feedback to all the members from our community. So happy to have you here, man. Enjoy the show. Next up, we've got George. George is coming in with a vintage camera. And is asking for any suggestions about the texturing and the overall look of the camera. Cool, let's have a look. Let's make the brush smaller first. Let's see. Okay, like a couple of things that I can spot first, right? Is you gotta be careful with how intense like the color variation is. Especially when you're using a procedural texture or like a generic texture, right? Because if you can, especially on this side, I can tell that it is a clouds texture. You probably want to make it either like more subtle, or you want to make like the variation like bigger, right? So that it's not like small cloud sections, but that it's actually like a bigger pattern that is like more subtle, and there's like a little bit of discoloration going on. So yeah, just having like a bigger pattern here is definitely going to help already, or just being more subtle if you're doing like smaller details on it too, right? And then continuing on, be careful with the texture that you have on here. I think Doreen says that you're killing it. Oh, thanks, Doreen. Yeah, and thanks for both watching as well. I mean, it's awesome to see you both here. But yeah, on the texture side of things then, right? I think it's basically the same feedback as before, where it looks a little bit too generic, right? So you kind of have to find a way to break it up, either by breaking up the pattern itself, where, for example, in certain sections, like the pattern becomes like less visible. And then in other sections, like for example on the edges, right? Because you're gonna have more friction, like people are gonna be interacting with the edges more than just like a flat section on the asset. You might exacerbate like the effect of that pattern, right? So you're gonna make it more apparent on the edges in certain cases, so that you create like a little bit of interest and like an interesting variation between the two. And then also, kind of in the same line what I was saying before, thinking about like how people interact with this and like really playing in on those factors. For example, again, like you have this little ridge. That ridge is probably gonna be like filled with little bits of dirt, like little bits of dust. Because again, like people are gonna be touching this, right? So eventually, like there's gonna be stuff that's on your hands that's gonna remain on the camera. So there's gonna be like sections that are gonna like slightly change the color and the roughness response of the surface itself. So I think in general, let's make some notes in general, right? So, number one, think about human interaction. And it sounds ridiculous, right? But what I try to do is I try to imagine if I have this thing in front of me, like where am I touching it? Like if I'm taking pictures, right? Like how am I touching it? Where are my hands going to be? And then on those places where I'm going to be touching it a lot with my hands, you're probably going to have a more oily surface just from like your skin oil, right? And that's going to then affect the roughness as well. For example, what you'll often see as like a quick example on this little section over here is that you'll see breakage of the pattern of like the leather on the side of the handle, and then you'll probably see like more wear and tear like the closer you get to the middle of the handle. Because again, like what we're doing is we're picking this up here, right? That's why the handle is there. So skin oil, that's probably gonna affect the base color, affect color and the roughness. And then this is gonna be breaking the leather. Actually, give me a second. I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick. Hey, gotta go, buddy. See you around. Yeah, thanks for popping in, man. Both you and Doreen. It's awesome to see you here. Okay. Let me see. Which one is this? I don't think it's this one. It's a little bit different. Is it that one? Remember. I mean, it doesn't matter too much, I guess. Still have a third one. Let's see. It's not the exact one, but like it's from the same brand, so I was just looking if I had like another one. This is a different one. I think this one has like an accordion lens. It's been a while since I... Yeah, there we go. Okay. Nope. Not that one. You can kind of see, like, let me see, right? Like, even on the straps and, like, the leather breaking, you can see what kind of effect I'm talking about, right? And then even if you look at, like, the surface here, you can see, I mean, let's be honest, I haven't touched this in a while, but you can see how much dust and dirt there is, right? Like, even the little crevices, like over here, that little inset. And then kind of have all this stuff in here. See, I'm trying to give you the good ref, right? Yeah, you can kind of see like the surface response of it all. And like how much detail in that leather there is, right? Like that accordion structure. Like how much there is. Super cool. And like even on like the things that you don't think about, right? Like all the different bits of metal. Right? There's like so much like surface response on that. See how close I can get. You are welcome. Let's see if I can give like another example. Yeah, I think this one is the most interesting one though. Oh, this is so dusty. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. What else do you have on there? Yeah, but I think that showcases what I mean by that, right? See, I'm thinking if there's anything else that's relevant. I mean, just what I touched right now, right? This has been in like a drawer for quite a while, so you can kind of see like how dusty it is, right? But just like the surface response of like the leather itself, there's actually like a lot of detail in there too. Yeah, just wanted to show that. Got some screenshots already. Awesome. Let's switch it back up then. So yeah, it's about the second thing that I wanted to bring up is, well, first we talked about like the human interaction, right? And with that human interaction in mind, think about layering. Layering is super important. Like, Will is a good buddy of mine. Like, whenever he shows off like the props that he's working on, it's always super interesting to see how many layers there are, right? And they're all like sometimes even like super subtle, right? Like 5 to 15% opacity in general. But they add so much if you all then combine them together, right? So like layering is key. Make sure you think about the layering. Yeah, and I think we're staying pretty broad, right? But I think this is going to be like super helpful. Just thinking about these two concepts and how you're going to apply them to the camera. I think that's going to be super valuable for you. So, what a beautiful treasure you have. Yeah, this was from my granddad. Like, it was awesome. Like, unfortunately, the lens is broken. Like, I got it broken. But, yeah. I have, like, 3 of these cameras that he used to use back in the day. And, like, we have picture books full of those. So, it's awesome. It's awesome to see. Yeah, cool. But no, I think this is going to be very helpful, thinking about those two concepts and applying them to, yeah, just to the camera. It's going to be really cool. Thank you, George, for sharing your work. And yeah, I didn't say it before, right? But I like the way that it looks already. Like, you got a really, really strong base already. And I like the material definition that you have going. So yeah, I'm really curious to how this is gonna come together, man, because it's gonna be sweet. Nice. Good luck. And we're gonna move on to the two Joes. Two Joes at the end. I'm gonna start out with Joe Bates. Quite a small update, but I've been tweaking the lighting. Quite happy with the roll-up. Do you think there's any aspects that could be improved upon? I still need to add more storytelling elements, but I'm thinking about keeping the story more simple for this one and focusing more on the story for my next one. In that case, I don't really think so. I think it could be interesting to look at like how you can create like more variation between like the paneling. And especially when it comes to the roughness. Because it might be because of the reflections, it might be because of the lighting, but like the paneling on the floor feels quite dull, you know? Like, it doesn't really have like interesting variation between it. I'm not saying that you have to go full metal, but just like a little bit of variation, like a little bit of roughness between the two could do wonders as well. Because yeah, like a lot of the metal, look, if the metal is dull intentionally, then keep it that way, right? But I think you can elevate it by like separating out like certain sections and making them less dull. Hi, thank you so much for subscribing. I'm sorry that I can't read your name. So sorry about that, but thank you so much for subscribing. I can't really read Cyrillic, so I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, Joe, like, honestly, this is all that I'm gonna say about this then, because most of it was honestly gonna be focused on like the story, right? But if you want to keep that for the next one, I'll keep it at that. But the main thing would probably be like more roughness variation on the paneling, like not only on the floor, but like also like these sections, right? Could use with like a little bit more variation. But yeah. Oh, also, is this glass? Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's all one trim sheet at the moment. Yeah, that's awesome. Just like a little bit more. Okay, so what you could do is make like a material instance of the trim sheet and make like a shiny version and a dull version, right? Um, so that could be like an option that you have there, so that you can just like slap like a shiny surface on some elements, or just tweak it a little bit so that like the different trims have like a different roughness variation. But I don't know. You could potentially also solve it with decals, right? Like decals could also be a really good option to maybe indicate, since this is not glass, right? Like maybe there's gonna be, maybe the machines have like a pneumatic oil spill, right? Like not a spill, but like just like a spray or something like that, and maybe you can see like a section of oil or water. Excuse me. So again, the way that I'm thinking about this is because everything in the scene doesn't have like is quite dull in its surface response, right? And if you want to keep that way, I would be totally fine with it too, right? Again, but it could be nice to I don't want to repeat myself, but like decals could give you like an option to kind of add some roughness variation into the scene with like a little oil spray, or maybe like someone spilled like a bottle of water and there's like a water spray or something like that, you know? Like it can be like very simple, very minimalistic, but it can just be enough to add like a sprinkling of like variation in there. So either in the trim or in decals. We'll look into that. Awesome, sounds good. The rest of it looks really nice though. I really like it. Good choice of concept as well. I kinda am a sucker, even though I am working on like a giant medieval scene right now. I'm kind of a sucker for this kind of like hydroponic sci-fi stuff too. So it's awesome to see that. Nearly there, Joe. Keep pushing the final percentages. Like also something that you could try is take it into Photoshop and just do like some post-processing in Photoshop and see what you can do. See maybe if you can get like a more interesting vibe out of it. Not more interesting, but like maybe you'll stumble upon something, right? I like doing that with my scenes as well, where like at the end I'll just do like a little bit of post-processing to just see if I can maybe push it into something that I wasn't expecting, because it is way quicker to do something like that in Photoshop than in Unreal, right? So it gives you like more flexibility. But yeah, looks great. Dunk. Nice. Okay. Sure, thank you. No worries. And then last but not least, we have the other Joe here. Joe Edwards. It's been a while since I've seen your work, man. Just means that you've been keeping busy. I'll take it as a good sign. Hey, Jeremiah. It's been a while. Jeez. Took a long break. Oh, dang. Yeah. How come? I mean, I don't want to make it sound too bad. Maybe, wait, let me switch it up. I hope you had a nice break. Second favorite. I'm grabbing to grab lunch. Thanks again, Tim. Great work, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for posting your work as well. Joe, let's have a look. I'm gonna keep it pretty high level, right? Let's see. Number 1. Subtle color variation. And what I mean by that is you can kind of see, let me see if I can find like a good section, right? So you can kind of see here that there is like, I mean, I don't know how good this is going to show on the stream. But like you can kind of see that there's like slight variation in the base color. Either by like sun bleaching or like other kinds of stuff, right? But doing subtle stuff like that where you have a lighter tint and then a darker tint and then just overlay them in a certain way, just really subtly, right? Because maybe you're doing that. I can kind of see you doing it, but I think it might be too subtle, right? So I think you could push that a little bit. And then we're gonna have a look at some of the the tags next, right? I think this is honestly like a great example that you shared. That a tag is not just like white, but it kind of has like a lot of texture and like base color variation, right? Now that I'm spotting like a little color variation on like this section over here, I'm assuming that you also did it on the red part, but it might just be like a little bit too subtle. Nice beard. Thanks. The main thing that I didn't expect from like WIP Wednesday is commenting, like people commenting on my beard, and it has happened twice now. So thanks, y'all. But yeah, let's see. What else can we say? Yeah, this kind of stuff on this tag looks really sick. You know, like just the variation in there looks really nice. Like that a lot. Love to see it. People like the beard. Yeah. How's everything going? Oh yeah, I didn't really reply, right? It's been going really good, actually. Been having a lot of fun on the medieval scene that I'm working on. So I'm getting in a really good spot. Like I'm really happy where it's going right now. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. Like I'm having a lot of fun, making like a lot of scenes, and I'm kind of preparing for my first post. And then we'll see where the next post goes. Yeah. Let's see. So we got the tags. And then I think for the third one, what I'm gonna say is how should I say this? Like dirt transitions? Because I'm looking for like this section specifically, right? And if you compare that to this section, like you kind of have like a lot of stuff going on here, where in your case it's pretty subtle. Well, like it's pretty strong, you know? Like it's very strong in its like application, but I think it actually like you could benefit from having like a longer gradient, right? So that it affects more of the object rather than what it does now. Give me a minute. Marky. Sorry, Nacho needs to go out for a walk. He hates his evening walk. Come on. What are you doing, silly? It's just looking at me for help. Yeah, man. Yo, Leslie. Leslie. Silly dog. Okay. So yeah, we got the tags. We got like a gradient for like all the wear and tear. I think also, yeah, I can kind of keep on going with this, right? But like, I feel like it will be better if, again, we bring up the layering again, right? And with layering, I mean very subtle layers, right? So dusting on top of it, sun bleached by the sun, damage from like people putting in the letters, like little bits of like dirt caked on like where people have to like lift up like the little lid, stuff that has been caked under the edge, like making it more apparent, right? But like still keeping it like relatively subtle. Like there's a lot of layers that you can build in, right? Same like this one, very nice. But then it's kind of interesting that on the object itself, like it goes from like dark to light to dark again, right? Which is honestly something that I didn't expect, but could be really cool. So yeah, think about layering, keep it subtle, and just add layers on top of each other, right? Again, think about if this is going to be outside, like what could be affecting it. I'll give you, maybe it would be handy to make a list, right? So, rain, sun, dirt from the floor. If this is in like a colder region, salt. Because if it's snowing, right? The way that they get rid of that with salt, that's also gonna affect like paint, right? So that could be an interesting one to see what the effects are on like paint and all that stuff. So we got rain, sun, dirt, like people, like nature as well. And like all these things, I mean, then you got like dust. What else could there be? Yeah, just dirt and grime and all that stuff. Like once you start really thinking about it, there's like lots of layers, and I would build like a layer for like all of these things separately, right? So that you have like a lot of control. And then if the sun bleaching is like a little bit too hard, like tone it down a little bit and increase like the dust or whatever, right? But like think about like all the layers that are going to be affected by something like this. Very cool though. Very cool prop. Oh, okay. One last thing. I'll give you like a bonus tip, right? Something that I've kind of beaten to death at this point, but it's going to be very subtle. But you see how this line lines up with this line, right? And with yours, you just go straight down, like they're perpendicular, right? That's not a thing that happens here, because this section probably got dented in, right? Not that strong, but you get what I mean, right? Like just adding like a couple of edges and just slightly squishing it in. Unrealistic for games, right? Like in a game, no one would care. But if you're doing this as like, hey, look, this is the best that I can do on a prop, you better show me that you're taking care of like all the details, right? Like everything. I want to see all of it. Even the most subtle stuff. So yeah, I would say add stuff like that in as well. One thing that I like doing in these streams is just pointing out all the details that I would myself be too lazy to implement, you know? Like, it's kind of nice. Like, I can just tell someone else, like, hey, look, I want to see like all the details. Basically all the stuff that I would never do myself. Oh, Jeremiah took some time off with the girlfriend. We traveled for a bit and rested. I'm about to start looking for an internship right now. I'm kind of stressed. But overall, looking good. Hope you are too. Yeah, I'm doing good too. And I'm glad that you're doing too. Good luck with finding the internship as well. And with that, I think... Let me do one last thing. One last thing. Okay, Joe just wanted to get like a little bit of feedback. That's good. Okay. I don't think I missed anything. So, I think that's gonna be it. Thank you so much, everyone, again, for posting your work. It's always awesome to see like what everyone is putting out there and how crazy talented like you all are. So keep up the good work. Keep pushing yourself if you're doing the ArtStation challenge, if you're looking for a job, or if you're just getting started. Keep pushing yourself out there. And remember, I'm here every Wednesday, so if you need any help, I'll be available. Well, if like there's a little asterisk to it, if you're a part of the community, right? I'll say that. But I'm available for your help, so feel free to reach out. And yeah, with that, I think I'll see you in the next one. I wish you all a nice evening and stay creative. Bye-bye.